Hello everyone and welcome to Fiction Friday. Today we have episode 33 of The Squire. I hope you enjoy it.
Cole followed Alana down the ladder. At the bottom, he found Maines on the ground with an unconscious Prince Adam sprawled on top of him. Cole hopped off the ladder and landed beside Maines. The ranger leader frowned at him. "I thought you would convince him to climb down the ladder." "Ran out of time. Is he hurt?" "No, he just fainted. I think I've got a few new bruises." Maines slid out from under the prince. "My heart bleeds for you," Cole said, drawing a laugh from the three surviving rangers. "Can you carry him in your delicate condition?" Before Maines could offer a comeback, a huge explosion shook the ground and sent clods of dirt flying over the wall. Cole suspected their reprieve was over. He turned to Alana. "Is it safe to walk through that dome?" She pursed her lips, and Cole got the impression she was annoyed with him. "I can't say. You might have killed the prince, tossing him off the wall like that." "It was only 20 feet. Worst case scenario, he breaks both legs. Besides, I had faith Maines would catch him." Maines gave an annoyed grunt. Before Alana could respond, Cole steeled himself and stepped through the barrier. It felt cold, like something tugging at his soul. And then he was through. He felt none the worse for the wear. He poked his head back across, a headache pounding at his temples. "You can live through it. Come on." The others crossed over, and when they caught their breath, Cole said, "Portal time." Alana raised her hands, and the familiar glow formed between them. A few feet away, a disk about the size of his face appeared in the air. Alana collapsed to her knees, and the little portal vanished. "I can't do it. I don't have enough power left." "Shit, let's get out of sight." Maines led them to a grove of oak a couple hundred yards from the castle. He laid the prince down in a clear spot and sat beside him. "What now?" Cole looked to Alana. "What do you need to get your power back?" She sighed. "A good night's sleep and a few hours of meditation." "Right, well, I don't expect Zarin will give us that long." "What else?" She shook her head. "I'm drained. I can't just wave a magic wand and get my strength back." Magic wand? Cole thought back to the ritual where they destroyed the soul box. "What about a focus?" Cole held out his sword. "The other light casters used this to help them focus their power. Would it help you?" Alana touched the pommel, then jerked her hand back. "I can't touch it." Michael put his hands on Rain's back and worked the magic through her. "Can you do that with me?" Her eyes got wide. "I don't know. I'm not as advanced as Michael." Another explosion reached them, and Cole glanced around the trunk of a tree. Zarin stood in a gaping hole in the wall, and the dome had vanished. Zarin turned and stared at the grove. They were out of time. "It's time to find out. Zarin's coming, and if this doesn't work, I'm out of ideas. Tell me what to do." "All right, let me think. Hold your sword out and point it toward where you want the portal to open." Cole did as she bid. "What now?" "Hold still and let me concentrate." Alana put her hand on his shoulder. Cole tried not to fidget as Alana did whatever she was doing. Any second he expected black flames to engulf the grove and incinerate them all. Warmth flooded through Cole, and the familiar disk appeared in the air a few feet from them, this one big enough to fit through. "Go, go, go!" Cole waved Maines and the rangers through. He glanced over his shoulder in time to see a sphere of dark energy flying toward them. "I don't know how long I can hold it." The strain in her voice, more than the words, told Cole how bad off she was. Cole grabbed Alana's wrist and lunged through the portal, dragging her behind him just ahead of the blast. They landed in a heap on the floor of Talia's casting room. Black flames followed them through, but vanished when the portal closed. Talia's crystal ball flickered above them. Alana's head ended up on his chest, and she looked out cold. Maines and the rangers stood in a circle looking down at them. He expected Talia to arrive any moment. She had to have some way to sense when someone entered her private chamber. "What now?" Maines asked. "This kid's getting heavy." Zarin watched the trees burn for a moment, then turned away. The Squire had fled an instant before the blast detonated. Damn the luck. Still, the news wasn't all bad. He felt his power slip through the portal and past the wards that protected Celestia. In that moment, he managed to inflict considerable damage.
The boy escaped.
The Black Prince glowered down at him.
That's twice we failed to eliminate a royal family.
Zarin ignored the criticism implicit in the statement.
True, but our agent slipped through the wards in the instant I disrupted them, so we may have gained more than we lost. Perhaps. Do we move on the final kingdom now? Indeed, before our enemies can warn them.
Zarin opened a portal and they stepped through. An instant later, they emerged in another throne room. A light blast staggered him, then another. Zarin snarled away the pain and raised a shield. Beams blasted at the shield, and he sensed half a dozen light casters out there attacking him. None of them had much power on their own, but together they had enough to inconvenience him.
It seems our enemies warned them after all,
the Black Prince said.
Indeed. Perhaps it was arrogant to appear in a third throne room in a row. No matter.
Zarin turned the shield into flames and sent them streaking in every direction. Screams rewarded his effort along with an end of the blasts. He glanced around the scorched room and found 6 charred bodies but no sign of the royals. Zarin reached out and located the prince far to the south. He found no trace of the king and queen. No matter how far they'd fled, he should have gotten some sense of where they were. If he couldn't, it meant they'd gone into hiding and their lightcasters had raised a barrier to hide them from his mystical senses. That would delay him perhaps, but no more. Zarin opened another portal.
Go find the Crown Prince. This portal will take you to his general location. I trust you to persuade someone there to tell you what you need to know.
He couldn't see his servant smile under his great helm, but he sensed it as the grim figure disappeared through the portal. With that task delegated, Zarin turned his thoughts to locating the king and queen. He doubted they'd gone far, as the warning couldn't have come more than a few hours ago. He frowned. Unless they traveled by portal. Damn it all, he should have left one of the lightcasters alive for questioning. Oh well, he'd just have to find someone else to ask. Zarin sent his thoughts flying through the castle. He found the weak life force of palace servants scurrying around like rats through the halls. None of them would have any useful information. He blasted a random door to splinters. In his annoyance, he blasted a good-sized chunk of the wall along with it. He stepped into the hall and turned right. He sensed someone approaching, and a few seconds later a plump woman with graying hair rounded the corner. She skidded to a halt and tried to flee when she spotted him. Zarin pointed, and bands of dark energy bound her in place and lifted her off the ground. He stalked toward her, stopping only when their faces were inches apart. The maid whimpered.
Please, Lord, don't hurt me.
Shut up. Zarin's gaze burned into her eyes and through them into her brain. He rummaged around her memories, finding nothing of great interest, until he saw the castle chapel. That seemed a likely place to find someone useful. Thank you. Zarin snapped his fingers and dark flames reduced the maid to ash. He followed the directions he plucked from the dead woman's mind and walked on. He encountered no resistance on his walk to the chapel. You'd have thought they'd leave at least a guard or two to entertain him. The door to the chapel radiated light energy. He blasted the door off its hinges and stepped into the rather plain chapel. The light energy pricked his skin, and with an effort of will he suppressed it, shattering the enchantment. The altar held gold plates used for collecting offerings. Maybe if he shattered the altar, the chapel keeper would find the courage to try to stop him. Only one way to find out. He set his hand on the smooth stone and hissed when it burned him. He focused on the pain and sent dark flames steaming out of his palm. The stone vibrated and cracked. A blast of light energy staggered him away from the altar. Standing in a hidden doorway, the chapel keeper stood with his hands raised and glowing with power. Zarin cloaked himself in dark power and readied a weak blast. He didn't want to kill the Keeper yet. The next blast skipped off his cloak, and in the instant before the Keeper recovered from his attack, Zarin struck. A fist of dark power struck the Keeper a solid blow to the temple, staggering him and sending him to his knees. Zarin gestured again and bound the young man in bands of power identical to the ones he'd used earlier. Confident that the Keeper couldn't attack him again, Zarin backhanded him hard enough to rattle his teeth. The young man groaned and opened his eyes. When he saw Zarin standing in front of him, he trembled. Zarin forced his corpse host to smile, more a death head's grin than anything that might express humor. "I won't tell you anything." Zarin patted his cheek. "I know." The Darkcaster drove his will into the Keeper's mind and tore through his weak defenses. In a moment, he saw everything he needed. When his awareness returned, he found the Keeper drooling, eyes rolled back in his head. It appeared he'd been a little forceful in his search. Not that it mattered. A snap of his fingers reduced the Keeper to so much gray ash. A blast of power blew the altar into gravel. Zarin nodded once. He hated leaving a job half done. Cole extricated himself from the unconscious Alana a moment before Michael and Rain entered the casting chamber. He caught himself before he asked where Talia was. If she hadn't shown up, she must have something important going on. Michael's eyes landed on the unconscious prince, and a look of almost comical relief spread across his face. "You saved one of them!" "It was a near thing, but we managed. 2 Rangers weren't so lucky." Michael shifted his focus to Maines. "I'm sorry about your men. Is he okay?" Maines nodded. "The kid fainted when Cole threw him off the castle wall." Rain shot him a glare. "You threw a prince off the wall of his own castle?" "What? It's not my fault he wouldn't climb down the ladder. Maines caught him with no trouble at all." "The important thing is he's here and alive," Michael said, trying to stop an argument before it started. "That means another safe sword. Take him and Alana to the healer's quarters, then everyone needs to gather in the war room. I'm afraid you're not going to get a very long rest." Cole bent down and picked up the unconscious Lightcaster and followed Maines out of the casting chamber. Michael and Rain walked along beside them. As they went, Michael said, "Some of Zarin's dark power made it through Alana's portal. The blast disrupted the wards for a short time. Like I said, it was a near thing. Half a second longer and we'd have gotten roasted. Is the Queen repairing the wards?" Michael nodded. "She knows them better than anyone. I don't know how long it will take, but Her Majesty will get them sorted out. In the meantime, there's one more kingdom that needs warning." They reached the healer's quarters, and he laid Alana down on one of half a dozen cots. A heavy-set woman, about as wide as she was tall, shooed him out of the way and bent over Alana. Cole moved aside, happy to leave the Lightcaster in the care of someone who knew how to look after her. Michael must have seen the concern on his face. "Don't worry, she's strong and will recover quickly. Unfortunately, not quickly enough to join you on your next mission. I'll be taking her place." Cole nodded. It'd be good to have the more powerful and experienced Lightcaster along. "Will you be assuming command?" "No. My training had little to do with combat tactics beyond my teacher telling me to blast whoever the commander pointed out." Cole grinned. "Sounds like something I heard a Corinthian siege engineer say once." Michael smiled back. "In the Great Wars, casters on both sides often filled that role in opposing armies." Cole turned to Maines. "What do you say, Lieutenant? Ready for another adventure?" Maines frowned. "Would it matter if I said no?" Cole's grin broadened. "Nope."
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Fiction Friday. If you liked what you heard, you can find more of my fiction on my website, jamesewisher.com. Please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing with anyone else you think might enjoy the show. Until next week, goodbye.